use Zencaster. Usually I use Zencaster. But it's been acting real funky with me lately. So
Oh, snap.
we're gonna try it through the Zoom.
Okay.
So guess what?
What?
You are the first returning guest to the Wolf Portal, which is really exciting.
I'm flattered. Yeah, your podcast is everything.
Thank you. So is the work you do. And it's crazy. I feel like we haven't like connected in so long. It's been, how long has it been? Like since, we did the last podcast. Like I feel like maybe almost a year, 7 months.
Almost.
I don't know. And like so much has changed from both fronts. And so, yeah, I was wondering if to lead us into this, if you could sort of go into what you were telling me about why you decided to shift your focus.
Yeah, so before I was focusing on a variety of niches. I was kind of bouncing around from habit coaching to introverts who are struggling with procrastination and just like general hypnotherapy, because we practice with sleep, insomnia, habit control, all of those things that your subconscious mind kind of helps you get in the way and get stuck and not move forward. It's under our umbrella, right? So I was jumping around, but I was not being authentic in what I really wanted to do it with my practice, because the moment I decided I wanted to be a hypnotherapist, I wrote down in my cubicle when I was working at Edward Jones Investments that I wanted to help the Black community with hypnotherapy, because I saw among my family and among my friends, they were all holding on to so much trauma or addictions or things like that, or like, insecurities that were keeping them stagnated and stuck in life, but they were just accepting it like, oh, that's just how it is. That's just how life is. Life is hard, just deal with it. Or I'm not, or, I would suggest going to therapy and they'd be like, oh, I don't go to therapy. They don't go to therapy for like a prescription for Xanax or something, like to, but not really to do the work. So I thought, man, I really want to help the Black community, because this message that life is hard and you're just stuck and that's just how it is not true. In my own personal transformation, I went from beating up people and throwing phones and being mean and angry all the time to being poor to thriving and being happy and loving and confident. So, but by the time I got certified and I was starting my practice, the movie Get Out had come and been a blockbuster.
The timing on that one is crazy, right? Because for real, like anytime I just watched it with my little sister, like it was her first time watching it, and she was like, I'm never getting hypnotized. And I was like, I don't think that's the takeaway from this movie. I don't really know what the takeaway is other than it's just like a beautiful, creative, fucking crazy work of art. But like, yeah, I feel like a lot of people are, do have this like weird feeling about being hypnotized because of that movie. And it's like,
totally 100%. And we can definitely dive deeper into that, because I can understand that. But not only that movie, but just in general, like I had really underestimated how much Black people in general avoid therapy and feared hypnosis. And so I was kind of forced to have these different niches to survive in my practice. But again, my heart wasn't really in it, but the whole time it was just gnawing at me and clawing at me that you have to do this. You have to serve people of color, and you have to, you want to do it, just be your authentic self. And I was like, no, the Ku Klux Klan is going to come after me if I end up successful, and people, I'm mixed, and so people aren't really going to take me seriously. And it was more also not only that, but I wanted to help men, specifically men of color, because I knew just from dating men, Black men and men in general, that they really give resistance when it comes to the inner work and expressing their vulnerabilities. And there's not really a lot of places for them to have a safe space to do that. Right. So when I first started I started my practice in 2019, but when I started my Instagram specifically at the beginning of 2020, like pre-pandemic 2020, I had a series called Men Mondays where I would post every Monday accounts and posts that would definitely like say, hey, it's okay for men to be vulnerable. And I would just highlight men's mental health. And I would share videos and whatever I could do and resources for men's groups where they could go and talk. Like I just wanted to focus on men's mental health on those Mondays. But you know, the reason I didn't commit to that being a niche is because I truly felt that men would rather go to another man for therapy. And I would even interview other Black male therapists on live and stuff to kind of do that. But I was like, oh, men want to go to other men. But again, it was something that the more I looked into it, the more I was on my own self-healing journey, the more I was trying to find resources for them, it was so limited. And you know, for women, we have things like sister circles. We can go and get crystals. And when you're shopping for crystals, they're like, put it in your purse or whatever. And it's like marketed towards women. We have rose quartz self-love spray, and we have, you know, journals. You can go to Target and get girl power, everything all over the place. And there's just so much marketed towards us for our inner work and our self-healing. And being a boss babe and all these things. But when I was trying to give that to my male clients or my male friends or my significant others, it was like severely lacking. It was scary. And even when they did get to the point when they wanted to be vulnerable, they would hide or just result to anger, because that's all society has ever taught them to do. Just, you know, just run away or just be angry, because that's what alpha males do.
Get away, wait till the weekends, and that's how you let your steam off. Or the gym is my therapy. That one is still huge. And it's like, okay, I get it, but the gym isn't really therapy, you know? And so like, and not to take away from any of the like benefits of the gym, because yes, like it releases endorphins and dopamine, it makes you feel good and like it's good for you. But at the same time, like there's the ability to go so much deeper than that, you know?
So much deeper.
And so, like the reason why I was like, oh my God, I had this moment where I was like, we need to connect again. Looking at your work is, like I was telling you, my little sister, like we were just fucking around and she's like we're like asking each other random questions on like Instagram Live or something. And she's like, okay, here's my question. Why do you only like white boys? Like, and it was sort of like a slight at me. And I was like, haha. And I was like, oh shit. And it's not true. Like, I'm still very attracted to men of all colors, honestly, you know, but like when I look deep into myself, there's a trigger there with Black men. And then like, you know, I started looking at that and I realized it's because like, you know, the type of like sacred union that I want and the type of partner that I'm looking for is somebody who's not scared to go deep with themselves and, you know, who has gone down the path of personal development and self-awareness and like all these things. And that's not to say that like guys who have done that are free of all the extra baggage and stuff. And that's like a whole other podcast topic for a different time, because it's actually like really crazy. Some men in the spiritual community, I don't know, but but yeah, so then I started to think about that, and I started to think about how like anytime I start talking to men of color about the things that I'm really interested in spirituality and personal development and these things, like it's usually like a reaction like, is that voodoo? like things like that. Like, nah, I believe in Jesus. Or like, you know, it's all very limited there. And then like, you know, I'm also very into the path of healing through psychedelics. And I always hear the same thing from Black men, which is like, I don't want to lose control. Like, I don't fuck with that shit, you know? And it's so interesting because it's almost like a part of people know like the power of these psychedelic medicines. And like, what are you so afraid of that's going to happen in this space of no control? Like, you know, like people are afraid to go into that shadow and into like, you know, the deep, dark depths of all the fucked up shit that we've been through. But the truth is that's where all the medicine lies. Like without, like, you know, we can either choose to live a life of like pretending it doesn't exist, which has other repercussions because you can only shove things under the bed for so long, you know?
Right.
You know, or we can like face them. And I feel like with the frequency of the planet raising and shifting, like a lot of people are choosing to do this inner work, but it is definitely lacking in the African American community, especially men. So it's like,
yeah. Girl, I just got goosebumps when you said that. Yeah, it's like I know it's true, but like to be able to talk about it with someone who's doing the work, a woman of color, it is important because it's like it's rare to have that conversation. Like you said, and yeah, it disturbs me that when like people will say, oh, like I have friends that are doing really well in their career financially, and they'll be like, oh yeah, you know, my mom's got cancer and I'm struggling with this, and they're dealing with a lot of stuff. But then I'll be like, well, why don't you work with me or someone else if you're not comfortable working with me? I can't afford therapy. But then they'll go and drop so much on like a party and a weekend in Vegas.
Yeah, always.
You know,
yeah, or
and
like
so
bottle
like
service.
yeah, and so the priorities there too is that I really feel like Black people have been conditioned to prioritize things that speak to the ego, the entertainment, the escapism, the look, you know, the flashy clothes and the sneakers. Like that's where the priorities lie. And I mean, I hate to say this, but you know, if we were to dig into where that came from, it comes from a sense of low self-worth.
It does.
And I even heard one instance, and I really hate to say that it comes from slavery, but because, you know, we haven't been slaves for how long, like, and I hate to use that as a crutch, but just when it came time for Black people to be integrated in society, or even to like be allowed to wear anything nice, it was on Sunday. Like either their masters would take them to church with them, or they had their own time to go to their own church, and that was the only time for them to shine. So that's where the term like Sunday's best comes, because they could really stunt. Yeah, they could really like show their identity and whatever they could do to like improve their look and really stand out in the community, their individuality. That's where that when initiated in our culture, just like look and fly, right?
That's so crazy. And truthfully, you should not feel bad about bringing that up, because like really, when you get into it, all the samskaras run deep, all these different patterns and all these are from this lifetime and past lifetime. Like this is deep ancestral trauma, like, you know, and so, yeah, of course, society's so quick to be like, let's just integrate and like leave it in the past. And, you know, like we're sorry for the sins of our ancestors, and like, without putting any blame, like without putting any blame anywhere, because that's not getting us anywhere as a culture, without putting blame on white people or without putting blame on our ancestors or anything like that. These are truths that we need to look at, you know?
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
So it's like this and so much other ancestral trauma, like, you know, when we really like look back, yeah, all of our ancestors were slaves at one point. We were probably slaves in past lives. You know, I feel this like is a truth deep within me. Like when I'm like diving into the Akashic records and like doing my like looking at my patterns and like figuring out why I am the way that I am and like why certain triggers, I'm like, damn, yeah, I'm almost positive I was a slave in past life. And all of my ancestors, like, you know, so we carry this, like, and people don't realize it. Black men don't realize, like, you were carrying so much trauma, you know, deep trauma. And like on top of that, from past lives that weren't even yours. And so then like we get to the trauma of this lifetime. And the truth is just like, a lot of us, most of us, you know, sad to say, like, weren't raised by people who did the work. And again, no blame. We all know that our parents did the best they could with what they had, you know, but the planet was at a completely different frequency back then, you know?
100%. No, there's definitely some synchronicity here happening with our conversation, because literally right before this call, I did a free consultation with someone and we were talking exactly about that ancestral trauma, because traumas that you don't even know you have. Ooh. And how that can be encoded into your DNA. Yes. And, because when you have things like insecurities and when you have constant rumination thoughts, depressed thoughts, fears of success, fears of failure, and these are things that dictate you. You have hormones, you have neurons firing, you have neural pathways that are encoded in you, and if you don't resolve that, that's going to encode just like a computer code into your descendants. Okay, and so that is something that you do have an opportunity to release, that it's a part of you. And what I also have learned is that there's a book called The Science of Living Heaven on Earth. And I'm going to snap because I don't even remember his name. Bruce Lipton.
I love Bruce Lipton.
Right? So he's the man. He is the homie. So he just gives really practical, easy to use, science-based things to use your brain chemistry and your body chemistry for healing. So that you're not doing years of work to have a breakthrough, right? We're all time poor. So what he said is, even when you're in the womb, when you're baking in your mother's womb and she's having thoughts, maybe she's having thoughts of, should I have this baby? Where am I going to be homeless? Maybe she's living in a homeless shelter. Maybe she had an abusive significant other or baby daddy who was beating on her. And any of those negative things she's thinking or experiencing is, again, hormones being washed into the fetus, and that again gets downloaded into you. So even when you're born and you have these like irrational fears, irrational thoughts, insecurities, worries that that have nothing to do with your current life experience, it could possibly not only ancestral trauma but natal trauma.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
It's crazy. And it's like, how many people, like for me, when I found that out, I started thinking about me, and I had a fear of being homeless, always having a fear of not being able to pay my rent, even when I was making really good money.
Same.
I was like, oh my God, where's that coming from? And then when I really did, I do past life regressions, and I do self-hypnosis for myself and my clients. And so I started I thought it was a past life thing. And I was like, maybe it didn't even occur to me for the Bruce thing. I misspoke, but I thought it was a past life thing. So I started to do a past life. And once I got to the point in the past life, it takes you to the womb. I was like, the trauma happened here because I'm adopted, but my biological mother was living in a homeless shelter when she was pregnant with me.
Wow.
Right?
Oh my God. That is crazy.
Crazy. Damn. And it didn't even occur to me until I was in hypnosis. I was like, and I felt all of her pain and all of her worries of not being able to provide, and why she was like looking for a family to give to me so she could give me and I just I thanked her. I loved her. I told myself, it's okay. You don't have to worry. And I haven't been afraid ever since. I just always have money coming to me for rent. Like, it's just like manifest now. And that's what I'm talking about.
I have some crazy goosebumps right now because girl, like this past whole chapter for me has been some really deep financial patterns that I'm working through. And so, I've been doing like a lot of inner child work, which I'd love to like dive into that like while we're here too, but listening to you talk just now really like opened up my mind to the fact, like, I know that when I was younger, I would see my mom stressed as fuck about the bills and things like this. But like now I'm realizing how much of what I've been carrying really isn't my own. Right? And it's so crazy. And see, that's why conversations like this and the work that we do is so powerful and important. And that's why it hurts my heart that so many people are like, nah, I'm good. Nothing's wrong with me. I don't need that shit, like fuck that. And so like, if you're not looking for something, you're not going to find it. So it's like,
please look, y'all.
Yes, yes,
Please, Lord.
because I tell you what, I tell you what, like where there's so many people and women right now doing the fucking work, going to the darkest parts of the innermost cave and fucking bringing back the gold that we find. And so my fear, well, reality right now really is like looking around and like seeing all these powerful, amazing goddesses doing all this work and like, yes.
Yeah.
And then being like, well, damn, it's slim pickings out here. Like where are the men
Facts.
who are gonna be who are gonna be real enough to go like deep within themselves and like do this healing work, and like I was thinking about doing this podcast and I was like, damn, I'm almost scared because I know that men listening to this are going to feel triggered,
Yeah.
like that's what's going to come up first. Like, and like,
Uh,
so I just want to say that like, this isn't a slight at anybody.
no.
This isn't like do better. It's like,
Right.
no, we've all grown like as African American, as humans, but
That's
then
humans.
even more so
Yeah.
as African Americans, we've grown from some fucking rocky ass
Yeah.
soil. Okay.
Got
The
off
rock.
mud.
Yeah. No, that's real shit. And like the Buddhists have this saying, and it's like, no mud, no lotus, and
Mhm.
it's so we all have this capability within us to blossom into beautiful, like magical, mystical lotuses. And like I'm so passionate about it because I don't think that we came to this earth realm to suffer or
Mm.
to pretend like we're not suffering or to look away from all of the things that have conditioned us into who we are today. Like I think we're here to work with that and rise
Work
from it.
with it. Yeah, it definitely feels like a realm of just learning, like like an earth school type situation.
Yeah.
I always look at karma. I think that's maybe something along the lines of what you're doing. Like, I believe what goes around comes around. So when things are happening to me or for me, I'm like, what did I do in my past life or in this life that I deserve this? I'm just gonna let it play out. I'm not even gonna be mad anymore. I'm just gonna be okay,
Yeah.
just let it happen. I will get through it. I'm sorry for whatever I did. I will pay my price and move on. Cause I'm
Oh,
just tired
girl,
of being
yes.
this victim mentality, like, oh, why is this always happening to me? I can't believe, da, 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 da. I mean, well, it's not happening to you. It's happening for you to learn and to rise
Mhm.
above it.
Girl, yes. And like
Yeah.
the moment we take on victim mentality, and this has been a big one for me because I'm not even gonna lie, I was playing with the victim, like I was playing in the victimhood consciousness for a very long time. It was actually like one of my friends who, like, me and her got into this deep talk about our friendship and like ironing out all the kinks in it. And she's like, I sometimes feel like you play the victim. And I'm like, bitch, how could you say that? I'm like, oh yeah, actually, you're right. And so when we stop playing the victim, we're taking our power back. And I just love that you brought up this topic because, like, girl, this is such a big thing in the African American community. And I'll start like really close to home using my cousin as an example. He literally hates white people. And he's like, and so we have this family group chat. And on top of being very racist towards white people, I'll tell him straight and he'll be like, Black people can't be racist. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
all
well,
right.
hey, I know. I'm like, but then like he'll always be saying things. And this group chat is like, all the cousins and like the whole younger generation too, and be like, it's hard for us in this world. America ain't built for us. Da, 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 da. Like all this thing that's all these different things that whether they're true or not, this has this really, really intense victimhood energy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And
Yeah.
so it's like, no, it's time to let that story go.
Let it go. That's amen. Because your beliefs and your perceptions dictate your reality. Like, you have something called a reticular activating system, where it's like the link between your conscious and your subconscious. And what it does, it kind of filters out all of the information that our brains are taking in all the time. Like, if you really think about it, there's so much noise in our world, from like notes on the wall, posters, noise in the background. Like, I have construction, like there's so much data coming in. But
Mhm.
if you were to really consciously be aware of it and focus on all of that, it would be just unbearable.
Overwhelming. Yeah.
So your reticular activating system is there to filter out what is important to you based on your beliefs, based on your ideas about your world and the self. Okay.
Wow.
So for instance, a really quick example is if you've ever been shopping for a car, or if you bought a car and all of a sudden you narrow down what that car is, the year, the make, the model, the color, and then you're on, or you know someone who got a car, and all of a sudden you see that car everywhere on the road. When you're like, where did this car come? Like, it's everywhere now.
Yeah.
Or you have, or just kind of, what else would be an example? Just you like a particular style of clothing and you see it, you know where to find it, you know how to see it, you know the color, but everyone's wearing something different all the time because everyone's seeing, they're focused on that, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So anyway, do your own research on the reticular activating system. But when you are a person of color and you are being taught that you are a victim and you have experiences, yeah, I'm sure we've all had experiences where there was a biased situation, but then because we have such an emotional charge with it, and it's our belief about who we are in the world, you are going to attract that into your life. You're going to be on that frequency. Your reticular activating system is going to be looking for that to reaffirm your belief that that is your reality.
Facts. That's so facts. And it's like, so just imagine like the difference of being somebody who looks out into the world and sees everything is happening to them, against them, and just where that puts you, like from a standalone basis, and the difference from just not having that perspective, from being like, no, I'm the creator of my reality.
I'm the creator. The world, the universe is looking out for me. I'm trained. And so that's a really important topic for me, because being adopted into a family where, like, my dad was Black, my mom was mixed, and I was a little mixed adopted baby. Like that, okay. But my mom's side, my dad's family wasn't in the picture. My mom's side of the family was mixed and mostly white. So what we would do is, holidays, Christmases, we would go to the white family members, their country clubs and their bougie stuff. And, my Black family members had bougie stuff too, don't get me wrong. But when we were at our white family stuff, it was very clear that it's like, oh, you're in the country club, why don't you, Terry, send your kids to the basement? Like, it was like not a welcoming sensation. And then at some point, one of my mom's sisters, because she had white sisters, so her mom had like different baby daddies, and she had Black baby daddies and white baby daddies. Okay, so her white sisters, one of them died. She was like the glue that held the family together, and her white sisters came to her, and not even came to her, wrote her a letter. If something happens to you, we don't want to be around your Black kids. Don't put us as a caregiver or beneficiary. Like, we don't really want to deal with the Black side of the family anymore. And these were like aunts that I loved. Damn. These were aunts that even though there was this like being this kind of, I kind of felt like they didn't want it. Well, maybe retroactively I realized that they were doing, but I was like, oh my God, Auntie Brenda and all these people I loved, I had to see in writing that because I was Black, they didn't want me. And on top of that, like,
oh my God,
I was given up for adoption, not only because she was homeless, but she was homeless because my biological mother, they were having a mixed baby. And so they fucking put her out on the street.
Wow.
Right. And so it's like this, and then we lived in really white suburban neighborhoods, and I was the only person of color in my classes. Same. And so in my Girl Scout troops. And so then, there was some ostracization there. So I don't say all that to say I would have anxiety going into new social situations, like, oh, they're not going to like me because of the color of my skin, or always, if I had friends of different races or whatever, I would always think, oh, they're going to reject me, or I have to act white to get them to accept me or something. Like, so I was like, dang, this is like, I am so tired of thinking this way. Like, why don't I'm in my car, like, oh, they're not, what if they don't like me because of the color of my skin? That is not a feeling that I wanted to live with. So I started training my subconscious mind to let that go. And so I would just show up in the world open to possibilities of loving myself, regardless of all of my skin, my melanin, all of loving myself, and giving people the opportunity to like me for who I am. And if they don't, great. If they don't like me because of my color of skin, that's their problem. That's their trauma. That's their conditioning, and not hold on to that, embody that. And I say all that to say, if you are out there and you're listening, you're a person of color, and you feel that, oh, people don't like me because of my brown, or there's injustice, really start to do some inner work to let that go, because you deserve to be free of that anxiety, regardless of what other people feel about you. That is a form of stress that hurts your immune system, that limits your potential. It's just, you don't deserve it. Just let it go. Okay.
Big facts. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. I literally was like about to cry, because that is so fucking powerful. And like, on the flip side of that, if you're listening to this and you're Black and you're like, fuck that, I don't give a, like, you're at the place where you're like, I don't care what others think about me. Like, you know, like, good for you. But in a sense, this is also false, like a state of false empowerment, you know, like, I'm really just thinking of my cousin, like people who maybe have the same mindset, this, like, you know, this sense of animosity towards people who aren't, you know, African American or whatever the case may be. Like, think of, I just, like, a lot of some of the most amazing people I've ever met who have taught me like such powerful things are white. Like, what is this when we get, like, let's just break this down for
let's break it
down for a second, okay? Who we are, who we actually are. Like, yeah, I can introduce myself as Shanoon Ocean, but that's not actually who I am. You can introduce yourself as Ashlee Badgett. Did I say it right? Badgett.
I like Badgett better, but Badgett, yeah.
like this is your name. This is this character who you've come into this incarnation as. And yes, this is powerful. This is beautiful. This is like amazing that we get to have these personas for this incarnation. But after this existence is over, and, you know, whatever, like, believe whatever you want, our energy, our incarnation, our cosmic, like, whatever is going to go somewhere, you know? And so this is like an infinite process. What we are is this infinite existence of the Om. Like, what we are isn't even this little voice in our head, because this voice in our head is just all this like social conditioning, all the stories we've been told, all the experiences that we've lived. But behind this body and behind the voice in our heads is the observer. And so this is where some of the most, like, this is where the true magic lies within our existence. You, like, getting to know this observer, like starting to really like identify with this observer and like get to peer through the eyes of this observer. And so, like, all that being said, like you can look into the eyes of another human being, and this is where it gets really trippy, and like realize that these observers have probably known each other for like such a longer period of time than this lifetime and other lifetimes, and this is who we all truly are. So to completely cut off an entire spectrum of humans who have also been through their own trauma, who have also who also love, you know, who also like learn and strive to be better. This is just madness to me. It's so crazy. And then like spreading that hate out to the younger generations, so that like my little sister and my little cousins are like, yeah, fuck white people. It's just like, so I know, I'd be like, no, that's not the way, you know.
It is social conditioning, like, and there is a lot of propaganda in our society that perpetuates those beliefs on both sides. Okay, on all sides. I mean, it's not just a Black and white issue. There's so many different, you know, forms of discrimination, but especially in America, race is such an easy trigger for people. And I'm going to tell you this might be like far out, but as a hypnotist, I know what induces hypnosis, and I know how hypnosis is used to influence people's brains. So speaking of, you know, we talked about Get Out and people are afraid of hypnosis. I would say that his hypnosis can be used for good and it can be used for manipulation. Okay. So one of the ways that I see it being manipulated is in mainstream media, because when one of the easiest ways to get people to be in a hypnotic state and influence their thoughts is through anxiety and fear. So when you, yeah, girl. So when you see things like be afraid, this is scary, you're gonna die, and just like crime and this, and you're attacked and you're gonna be sick and all these things, really look at that message and really step back and ask yourself, are these the facts? Is this really trying to help me, or is this trying to scare me and make me anxious? Studies show that and so because when that's the easiest way to control people is if you can get them afraid of something, then you can get them to listen. And once they're listening, you can access their subconscious, which is fucked up. And so I see it all the time. I see like, I'm like, dang. And then another way is repetition. So if you're constantly using repetitive messages, repeat the same message over and over again, that lulls people into like a trance hypnotic state too. And then you can slip in hypnotic messages, subconscious messages into that. So if you think of your average news broadcast, how many times are they repeating the same thing over and over again? Especially
like the same old fucking story.
The same story over and over and over again. And then the other thing is overload. If you have information overload. So again, with your average news broadcast, you have stuff scrolling on the screen. You have people talking heads. You have a talking head over here. You have numbers scrolling over here. And you have all this information and it's moving fast and we'll be back. And they're talking to you with their eyes like this. They're not really blinking and they have this really monotone voice. Like, that is on purpose. So I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say they're doing on purpose, but if it's not, then they are accidentally formulating hypnosis through all of that. So a lot of the things that we see delivered in that way has to do with race and racism and racial issues and racial injustice. But there's like a million other topics that they could use their platform for that would raise above it, that would help us have to evolve instead of pinpointing these instances where there are racial bias and injustice, because there's so much bonding and beauty in the world among different cultures and different races that they don't ever focus on that.
Yeah. You know, I'm really, really happy you went here. And, you know, I know that this is going to lead us into a rabbit hole, but I have full faith that we'll find our way out of this rabbit hole. But you know, it's so crazy because I used to be like, fuck Republicans, fuck Donald Trump, black and white, Black Lives Matter. I'm super liberal, Democrat. And then COVID happened. And then, you know, I started to like step back from the whole situation, because as soon as COVID happened for me, I was like, this smells really funny. This does not, you know, and I've always had this sort of like belief of like, okay, well, I saw the Matrix and I saw like the clear parallels that were drawn between the society that we live in today and the movie. And I was like, okay, we're all living in a Matrix, like, you know, Plato's allegory of the cave, all of this, like whatever. But then, you know, so since the beginning of COVID, I'm like, this whole, like, it sounds like this is what it feels like. This is what it feels like really deeply and really clearly to me, is when a card magician is like doing their magic trick. And so they're getting the audience to look over here instead of looking like where they're doing the shady shit, or like in a magician's case, not the shady shit, but you know, the shit that they don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I had this stance. I had this video of it and I was like, okay. And then it was really funny because I watched this whole thing play out to where the side that I sort of identified with was like, yeah, spoon feed me more of the news that you're feeding me, and fuck the side that doesn't believe it. And the side that I was like so withdrawn from was like, wait a minute, you know? And so it's just really funny because like I'm grateful for it, because this caused me to see the deep corruption in our whole news media. Yeah, you know, so and deep. So yes, girl. And so what we have in our society is an invisible hand controlling the puppet strings of the masses. And so they'll throw out a really fucked up story that happens, like for instance, the George Floyd situation. And it's like, God, what an awful, awful thing to happen to a human being. And like, God rest his soul. And like, I pray for his family and his children and everything like this. But the media undoubtedly played that up because they knew that this is going to like really fuck with every single African American in the country and give us a reason to be like, see, white people don't fucking care. All white people are evil. Fuck that. Like they knew what it was going to do. And so I truly believe the role that all these like big media industries, like the main role that they have, besides like pulling the wool over our eyes time and time again, is to drive this wedge between the masses, you know,
because it's when I don't mean to interrupt, but I think that's a good point just to like share, like divide and conquer, because we all want a better life. We all want to have more control. We all want to have more financial stability. We all want our politicians or whatever kind of governs society to be honest and transparent and to be for the people and to have a like even distribution of wealth, or not even, but just something where we're not working 3 or 4 jobs just to get by for some people, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, we want more justice, we want more equity, we want more freedoms, but we cannot have that if we are at each other's necks. Girl, and we are fighting. If we are divided, we're going to be conquered. And that's why it's so important to come together in a sense of unity and as for humanity. But if you're just like, oh, I don't fuck with white people, you're missing out on a whole different type of vibe or resource or a sense of connection that's going to help us move forward as a species and like really help us be free. So yeah, divide and conquer, like you said, they drive a wedge. Divide and conquer is like the oldest trick in the book when it comes to governments, right?
It really is.
And I definitely resonate with that a lot. And it's really sad, but
yeah, it is, because it's like while we're pointing the finger being like all these white people I don't fuck with, like there's probably white people and Black people and Asians. There's probably every race at the top playing the invisible, like taking the wealth from the masses and being like, all right, let's give them these ideas. Let's play things out like this. Like, you know, this whole 1% or whoever the fuck, you know, I don't mean to sound too conspiratorial or whatever.
Right, love it, yeah.
No, but you know, conspiracy or not, what's very clear in today's day and age is that the politicians, our whole political system is very, very corrupt. And, you know, I'm sure there's a higher, you know, sort of realm of like above the politicians, giving them their like whatever that they're doing. You know, I don't really like,
I hear what you're saying 100%. And y'all do your own research. Don't take our word for it, but there's so much research out there that you can do to see what she's talking about or prove her wrong, but you know, don't just be like, no, I should come in with curiosity, because there's such a hierarchy in the world. And not only that, like I want to just go back to what you said about the media pushing out that story of things like George Floyd and all that stuff, because they know that it will trigger people of color, especially, or people that, you know, are like white liberals or whatever. But when you are being fed information or when you are hearing information, ask yourself if it's putting you on a low vibe or a higher vibe. Because when you can hear something and someone's like, oh, I'm saying this to care about because I care about you and you should be mad and this happened and whatever. But their studies show that when there are actual frequencies, your emotions are attached to different frequencies. And when you are in a place of anger and resentment and violence and anxiety and a lack of forgiveness, you are literally on a lower vibration where you are more susceptible to disease, to victimhood, to being abused, to feeling insecure, to having a lack mindset. But when you come from a place of love and confidence and forgiveness, and cooperation, you're literally vibrating on a higher frequency where those negative things in life are less likely to play out, or at least if they do, you're more easily to rise above it because you're coming from a place of a solution mindset and a master mindset instead of a victim mindset.
Yes.
Okay. So you're able
Yes.
to expand in those things. So I would really ask people to just look at the chaos in the world and ask how you can look at it from a place of love and understanding and confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Rather than wanting to go burn some shit down.
Yeah, that's facts. That's facts. Like I think like on gosh, who is it? I think it's the David Hawkins like emotional scale. It
Right.
shows like, you know, where the resonance of the vibration of our frequencies are. Like it gives you a very clear visual. You know, it'd be so cool if I could like just pull it up
Pull
right
it
now.
up, right?
But I think the two lowest resonating frequencies that we as humans experience are frequencies of shame and guilt.
Shame, guilt.
And these like these are for, you know, like speaking from personal experience, these are like emotions that I was resonating at for such a long period of my life, you know, without even realizing it. And going back, way back, finding our way out of the rabbit hole, going back to like just healing in general is like, you know, it's crazy. Like I did not even like I was pretty deep into like the awareness of the fact that I was on a spiritual journey before I got like really, really fucking got like, oh, this is why healing is so important. So
Right.
this is really saying something. And it's just so funny to me because I always think about when I first started meditating and like doing all the work, like I'd like look up the meditations and be like, ooh, meditation for the chakras, meditation to raise my consciousness, to connect to the angels, to connect to different realms. Like I was into to manifest all of this like deep in it. And every time I would see like anything geared towards healing, I was like, nah, I'm good. Like, I don't know how to heal. And
Interesting.
dude, yeah, and it's been crazy as fuck, like, because this is like a never ending journey. Like, I want to be very clear, like, when we're talking about this, I really like if there is fucking amazing, if there is some quick fix, some like magic fix, like, amazing, truly. Like, you know, I wouldn't like not wish that for anybody. But you know, from where I stand and all the conversations that I have, like with myself, with other people, everything, this is a lifetime, a
Oh,
lifelong journey of
mm,
healing, you know.
yeah.
It's like the waves of healing are up and down. And like,
No.
you know, it's learning to find the beauty of this journey rather than like only being like, oh my God, this high is so beautiful, to be like, oh fuck, I'm coming crashing down again. This sucks. Like learning to find the beauty in the whole dance, the whole process.
A
And
whole dance.
dude, yeah. And so like I don't want people like, you know, who are maybe thinking about like looking a little bit deeper into healing to be like daunted by the task, because it is a big task, you know.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm being inspired to talk about just the healing space and how it's dominated in a racial aspect. Because I know we've talked about like harmony among the races in a nutshell, like being open and not just being like, oh, I don't fuck with white people or black people, whatever.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the healing space, it is, in my experience, really dominated by non people of color,
It
Caucasians,
is.
white
Yes,
people.
girl, this is true.
And that is one of the reasons, not only is like therapy stigmatized in the Black community, but it's like if a Black man were to go to some of the places that I would recommend to them, they would be like the token Black guy. And that is so uncomfortable for them,
It really
and
is. Yeah.
for many reasons. And I know in my own healing journey experience, when I would go to things like sound bowl meditations and chakra groups and all these things, in my spaces, I was like one of the only women of color, and people would come up to me before I would even be able to tell them who I was or what I was about. And they'd be like, oh, it must be so hard for you being brown. It must be so hard for you. And, oh, I love Martin Luther King. I just want you to know that. Like,
I
they would
voted
have
for
to
Obama,
like,
you know.
right. Yeah. They would have to like say, oh, I'm down, or, you know, they would have to make my race a thing to make themselves feel comfortable. They think they would have to call that out to
Yes,
have some
queen, goddess. And it's like,
yeah, oh, I love your
oh,
hair. Like, don't put your fingers in my hair, you know.
yeah.
And or it would be something where I would volunteer race stuff that would bother me in private therapy sessions or group ones. And the response would be like, oh, you're just overly sensitive, or that didn't really happen. Or, they would just not be validated, that experience. If someone called me a nigger or something, well, you're not that dark. Like, why would they,
Wow.
it's, other dark people do that. So it would not be a validated experience, or it was try to make me feel like I was too sensitive. And that is something that a lot of people of color either fear will happen, or they have experience happen. So they just shut down that healing space altogether. Mm-hmm. And that's another reason why it's so important, why I feel called to do what I do for Black men, is because the last 2 years, I would look back on my practice and I realized that the majority of my clients were my ideal client, Black men, Black millennial men who were struggling with rage and self-control and stagnated in their career and negative thinking. They wanted to come out of that space. So after having all these conversations with them, I hear things repeatedly. I want to be unapologetically Black. I feel like I have to shrink myself and who I am to conform to white society to make them feel comfortable with me so I can be good in my career. And I'm not allowed to cry, and I'm going through a lot of things, and I don't feel comfortable opening up in spaces of that are dominated by white culture, because if I do, it could backfire. And that's just how Black men aren't strong enough. See, they have this, you might confirm some sort of bias for some people in that circle, if that makes sense. As I don't know if you've experienced this, but I personally have experienced this, especially in corporate America, where it did not matter how smart I was, how educated I was, the results that I was getting on a consistent basis, how the metrics I was meeting, I always had to bring my game 300, 500% just to be seen as competent, not even good at my job, just having the ability to do my job. Because there was always, especially in Missouri, this kind of tension in the air, oh, we don't expect you to perform well. You're Black or whatever. And so if I did good, they'd be like, wow, you actually are doing good type thing. And I would be passed up for promotions and all of these stuff. So it was there's this, sometimes society can have this vision of us that we're not capable, that we must come from a bad background, that we must come from poor education, that we must do this. Not every white person feels that way, obviously, but I even have Black friends that'll be like, oh, I don't go to white hairdressers, or I don't go to Black doctors, because they feel like, oh, they might not be as good. I've heard that growing up,
Yeah.
So it's that can weigh on you. And
absolutely,
that is something that I want to help my clients. They don't want to go into white spaces where they're just going to be already seen as inferior or less than, or already well, if you're not successful, you're not happy, then that's probably, they're just making all these negative assumptions, if that makes sense. So it's important for me to give them that safe space to be able to vent about these things and validate it for them and say, hey, yeah, you're not a token here. You are heard here. I feel you. I've been there. If I haven't been there, I empathize with what you're doing. And that is so important, because not only do they not feel that in therapeutics or healing spaces, but also just in general in the Black community, Black women are taught to just be not love men unconditionally. They're oh, well, if you can pay my bills, and if you can get my hair done, and if you can do this, then I will fuck with you. I'll date you. But a lot of times, if they can't perform that way, or if they're not an athlete or tall or super built, then they won't mess with the guy. Right. And so they kind of kick them to the curb, and until they can have that list of what they feel like a Black man should be there. And then if the Black guy has a hard time, or if he's unhappy, oh, you should just be a man. You should just be stronger than that. You should be this. If he tries to come to her and says, I'm struggling, I'm unhappy. How are you going to be unhappy? I clean for you. They're not listening. And they can't go to their male friends because there's so much machismo, so much macho, tough Black, thug it out type shit, where they're you can't confide in their male friends. So where do they go when they have traumas, generational or current, or
to the club?
Yeah, to the
That's
club, to
yeah.
vice,
Yeah.
to strip clubs, to porn, to things
Mm-hmm.
that society says is normal for them to cope with everyday life.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it really isn't. And like it breaks my
Yeah.
heart wide open for Black men because God, like this sense of acceptance and unconditional love truly is just so it's everything. It's
Yeah.
everything in this healing journey. And like just to go back really quickly to you talking about these different healing spaces, I really struggle with feelings of resentment for how inaccessible a lot of these deep healing powerful containers are made for African Americans because
Right.
without like bringing any of the victimhood into it, there are just facts, you
Facts.
know.
Right.
there
Yeah.
there are just facts, and the facts of it are that America is a country that was built on slavery. So here we have not every, but most, a lot of white people and people of, you know, other races, African American or like Hispanic also races who
Right.
have a foot up, you know, who have like who are coming from maybe more money or better conditions or whatever the case may be than a lot of Black people, you know. And so like when we go over to this whole like healing realm and spiritual realm and therapy, like a lot of these things are really expensive, you know. A lot of like some people I really look up to in the spiritual community have these amazing events and things that are truthfully inaccessible to a
Yeah.
lot of people of color who need
Right.
healing,
You
who
need
need healing
healing.
like so much. I'm not going to say like more than anybody, but like, you know, here is like a whole culture, like a whole group of people who like starving souls, truly
Yeah.
starving souls. Like we need this. This is like where so much attention should be focused. So it can get like a little bit frustrating when like, oh my God, hey, here's this like really cool healing event or like sacred space. And then like looking at the cost and being like, well, you know, like, I don't know, I'm going to have a hard time, like trying to get my friends to come to this one with me, like, you know,
Right.
and so yeah,
Yeah.
that is something that does frustrate me a lot. And then like it's really cool to see like a lot of different programs for like what I'm thinking of right now is like yoga. A lot of different yoga teacher trainings and things like this will have like by POC, like different programs. And I'm like, okay, well, cool. But then there's also this stigma in me that's like, okay, well, if I get a scholarship for a yoga teacher training because of the color of my skin, they're going to look at me differently. So I
Yeah.
really feel everything that you're saying.
It's such a soul journey that like our conversation I'm realizing is the epitome of what it is like to be Black in America. It's or especially when you're doing healing work, it's like this constant dance of forgiving, accepting, loving, expanding, but also having to face facts. Like, okay, there are certain things in place that we have to rise above that makes it less fluid and not resenting that to the point of just our own detriment, you know? So,
Yes.
and yeah,
Yes.
especially like my practice, that's been a huge thing is me determining my prices because there are hypnotherapists that will charge $1,200 for one session. And it's like, damn, like I would love to ball out and do that, but I also know that I need to be accessible.
Yes.
And that's why I offer payment plans and I will give promo codes and I will just work with people and be like, look, okay, I know that, you know, you are trying to seek therapy, you're coming to me and this price doesn't work with you, holler at me, we'll figure something out because I don't want you to feel like, I know when I was struggling financially and I was at my edge and I needed mental health and I couldn't afford it, that's not a very good place to be. Yeah, that is like, and you don't have family or friends that are willing to spot you in order to do that because they don't believe in therapy. That's even harder. So if you're listening and you feel like you can't afford therapy or you don't have insurance, I don't even take insurance, so you can like come at me and we will work something out because it should not be it should not be inaccessible. And you know how those people who are manifesting those higher prices and clients that can pay them, more power to them. It's just not the reality for a lot of people. And so I also just want to go back to really quick before we wrap up the idea that we were talking about in the beginning of women healing, doing this healing journey and stepping into their goddess and their divine energy. And they're, even if they're not going to that level, they're going to therapy, they're doing something, and they're looking at their significant other, or they're looking at the dating pool and they're like, dang, like I don't have anyone to go on this journey with. And society, we were talking about society, how it's built, is actually built that way. There's this book that I read called The Love Gap, Why Smart Women Are Still Single, the truth of that. Yes. And in it, they actually did a study, and they showed that if a man says, I want a smart, attractive, funny, ambitious woman who's got her own stuff and I can whatever. And so they said they wanted that, but then they were put in a dating situation where they had two prospects. One was what they described, and the other one was not as beautiful, not as smart, not as whatever. And they even would do like a standardized test. And if if her score was lower than his, he would be going on a date with her. He would not choose the woman that he said was on his list, right? And this was happening over and over and over again. And getting back to the healing part in a second, they looked, and it's because society, we're still operating on some primal instincts of the men being the breadwinner, the provider, the hero. Men have a hero instinct where when we were in tribes, they were hunter-gatherers, they protected, they did this, and they rose to the equation to provide, to protect. But as we evolved, women didn't need heroes anymore. We could do our own thing. We could fix cars, and we could pay our bills. We could do all this, but men still have that hero instinct to want to be the provider, and they still have the social stigma that they should be that for the woman. But they're not getting that need met in society anymore because gender roles are so blurred and all of this. So that's one element of it. The other element is that parents and families and cultures really groom women to have their hierarchy of needs met. There's something called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you start out which is having shelter met, your friends, there's different tiers of having your needs met, and then you go to self-actualization, and that's at the top. You have to have all these other needs met to get to self-actualization. And that just means that you're more confident, that you feel good about what you're doing. And in general, society is not setting up men to get to that tier of self-actualization.
Wow.
It's really setting them up just to have these lower needs met. And then they don't have, like we talked about earlier, these safe spaces for any man to go and to vent, to cry, to heal, to feel like it's okay to have these wide array of human emotions without stigma. Okay. And so they get stuck in the middle, but these women are surpassing them, being self-actualized, and they're kind of here. And that's why men will ghost you in dating situations. That's why men will just act out. That's why they cheat, because they are subconsciously trying to have these other needs met, and they don't know how, or they know that they need to do something more before they feel worthy of you.
Wow. That's so crazy.
It's so crazy. So it's that's why I also feel it's so important for what I do and for the people that are in this work that are really focused on men, because if we're going to have a society with better marriages, with better dating options and harmony in relationships, we're going to have to set men up for success better and having their needs met so they can get to self-actualization and feel comfortable in their skin, feel comfortable talking about self-love, and whatever type of healing modality they want to use, they're using it as a maintenance, as a journey, not just a one-time thing.
Yeah, that's so facts. Any Black men listening to this right now, wherever you are in the time space continuum, I truly encourage you to just open your heart up and be honest with yourself, because the truth is we can only be as honest with others as we can be with ourselves. So like that's the first step, I feel like, is getting truthfully like honest with yourself with a sense of compassion. Like, you know, go back to like the first time you were younger and like told to man up or toughen up, and like
Oh my
give
God.
that inner child love, give that, like, go, you can do this timeline shifting. Like this has been such a powerful practice for me, is going back to like the moments when I was a child and like feeling the most vulnerable and the most scared and the most hurt, and like going back and being with that child and being like, hey, I'm so sorry that you went through this, but like I'm here for you and I'll give you all the love you need, all the care you need. And like, you know, like I can understand how these things might sound corny or cheesy or like, you know, like lame, like I ain't gonna do that shit. Like, no, but like just be honest with yourself, because these are like little practices that you can do to really like heal, you know. Like I really encourage, like, you know, all humans, but like really like Black men to like just start the journey, like, you know, whatever it takes to get started, just like you were saying, like whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, whether it's hypnotherapy, whether it's therapy. But, you know, also, yeah, and I know that we're wrapping up here, but I do want to like dive real quick into this topic of like why I'm really, really like right now fucking with practices like yours and mine and holistic practices, because like I would be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that, like, you know, going full circle to this whole entire conversation, like I think one of the most corrupt uh entities in our society right now is the pharmaceutical company. They want to eat us alive, okay? And so if like don't like, if you're somebody who is seeking therapy and you go to a therapist and they recommend you to a psychiatrist, they're gonna tell you that something's wrong with you. And I don't want to sound like a heretic. I don't want to, like, you know, take away from the mental health industry, because I know that like in a lot of cases, in some cases, you know, mental health is a slippery slope, and it's very, very like fragile isn't the word that I'm wanting to use, but like, you know, it's something that we have to be careful with and talking about and all these things. But I have a lot of friends and family members who have gone to therapy or like talk to their doctors, and they're like, you're broken, so I'm going to give you this pill to fix you. And then like, here we are 10 years later, and you're dependent on this pill for happiness. You're dependent on this pill to feel like a real human being, to feel like any ounce of joy. When in truth, like, and the fact of the matter is you were never broken.
Girl, yeah. I went to I had a family member that was in therapy, and they had a family day where they had like a group therapy session. They wanted to just bring their family for moral support. So I went, and what it ended up being was a seminar on antidepressants. And they literally told everyone there that you'll probably be on this the rest of your life. And I was like, oh, hell no. And I turned to them and was like, if you think that that's true, you have more problems. That's not it at all. I was so mad. I wanted to just throw something at that lady that day, because that was before my anger management days. But I was like, I did not believe that, girl. And when I was depressed and I couldn't get out of bed for days, I would just have my cover over my head for days and days and like not even know how to like function. My family would just open the door and they would just shake their head and close the door. They just didn't even know how to deal with me. Mm-hmm. They would open the door and they would come in periodically and be like, you should just get antidepressants. Like that's, and like you see on, I don't have a TV, but recently I was watching a TV series and there was commercials, and I was like, no wonder people only think that antidepressant is the answer, because there's pharmaceutical commercials that are just like, oh, now I know how to manage my depression. Like there's infinite possibilities. Girl. There's infinite possibilities on how to manage and overcome. Your depression is actually if you can look at it as an opportunity for growth, it can teach you. It is a catalyst for transformation.
Preach. It really is. That's where the magic is, in the fucking dark depths of the innermost caves. Like that's where the true healing medicine is. The true medicine isn't out there any of the time. It's always in us. You know, the pain that we feel, the depression that we feel, the anxiety that we feel is a call back to ourselves, a call to look deeper, you know? And so like there's so many beautiful healing modalities that are holistic and like, yeah, I wish I didn't even use that word just now. Like natural, you know, like this which where, you know, we'll put your code. Ashlee also sells CBD supplements that are fucking incredible. And like,
I'm glad you mentioned that, because just like I've been trying to tell people, they're like, why do you deal with CBD? I'm like, just like how traditional therapists will recommend something for your brain chemistry to help you be happier, less anxious, I'm doing that with CBD. I don't prescribe anything, but I recommend it because we do need things that help with our body chemistry. I learned that the hard way because my anger and rage started to come back up when I was struggling financially again. And I was like doing all of my emotional freedom technique, hypnosis, meditation, journaling, all my normal modalities. And I was like, still like, you know, what's going on?
Yeah.
Praying, girl, whatever. And then the CBD came into my life and I realized we need something to get our mind and our subconscious right. But then you have body chemistry that can do things like CBD that helps regulate dopamine. So if you're doing drugs or drinking and your dopamine is kind of off, it helps regulate your dopamine. It helps regulate your serotonin, these hormones and neuron transmitters that regulate those happy feelings, those happy moods. It helps your gut health. Your gut is your second brain.
I think that CBD helps gut health.
Yeah, wow. It helps gut health, girl.
I fucking love CBD so
much. It's the best.
Like, it really is.
It's like if you're someone who needs, I recommend a dietary supplement. So if you feel like, supplement could help me with better sleep, less anxiety, less stress, mood support, definitely tap into CBD. Find one that's good. It's hard to find a quality one because there's stuff out there with mold and metals and bacteria, and you don't want that. So hit me up if you just want some tips on how to find one. I work one that's super good. But plant medicine, CBD is like
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, it truly is, you know. So there's things like CBD, there's things like cannabis, which, like, you know, unfortunately it can get to the point where people are using it as a crutch, which is why like I encourage people to look into other modalities as well as smoking weed, you know, smoking weed and working out. Like these are the top two that people are like, but you know, like there's more. There's plant medicine, there's mushrooms, which I'm always going to be like, you know, a proponent, is that the right word, of psychedelic, like plant medicine and psychedelics, because there's like these beautiful gifts from Pachamama, from Mother Earth, who is like, like here is something that you can take that will shift your whole perspective, like blow your whole fucking paradigm out of the water and show you that like you are interconnected with everything and give you this crazy sense of like love, like crazy perspective shift, you know, like there's just so much out there. And so I don't know exactly how like the evolution of my work is going to look, but I have my fucking eyes set out for big pharma and like taking the wool off of people's eyes for how corrupt this industry is. Cause like it's too much. It's like they literally don't give a fuck. And all that, well, they do give a fuck about their pockets getting bigger, but they don't give a fuck about the actual like healing, you know?
Right.
And so, and this is the journey that we're meant to take, the healing journey.
Definitely. Hold on, sorry. Yeah.
So, so anyways, Ashlee, thank you so much for coming on to the Wolf Portal again and sharing all your light and your wisdom and your knowledge. And could you tell people where they can find more of your work and the things that you offer?
Absolutely. So I am on Instagram mostly at Ashlee B Hypnotherapy, ASHLEE, B as in boy, hypnotherapy, all one word. You can also go to ashleeb.com, spelled the same way, and ashleeb.com. And there you find more about my history, my client reviews, video testimonials from clients, what I'm about, and book a free consultation. And yeah, DM me or hit me up on my website. I look forward to talking to you guys.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much.
Yeah, thank you. You're so beautiful. I can't wait to talk to you again.
Same. I just lost this screen. This laptop's kind of crazy sometimes. Okay, there it is. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hey.
So do I end it now?
I see the button that says leave, but I don't want to leave before like getting a chance to save the recording.